Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pay Attention, where we're learning to pay attention to the hidden influences in our body and minds from moment to moment so that we can make decisions from a place of clarity and objectivity. And today I'm speaking to you from the upper valley of Vermont, where I'm visiting my sister. So there's a train track on one side and a rural route on the other side. So if you hear anything during this podcast, we'll just, work through it. Yeah, up here, leaf peeping, what they call it, looking at the fall leaves. It's amazing. But also I have an amazing guest here today who brings up a topic that really does start a lot of people's journeys back to, finding their true power and their true nature and what they're really here to create. At the low point in my journey, I was married. And I spent a good year or two in meditation, physical, mental, spiritual studying before one day the lights came on. And I woke up to the manipulation, the mutual manipulation and control in this marriage. And I bolted. I bolted, not gracefully, nothing I'm proud of, without any compassion or understanding for my then spouse, which threw me into an 8-year battle for my children and to prevent my alienation from them. Nothing I ever wanted in my life or expected, but certainly something I learned a lot from. However, it would have been wonderful to have an advocate back then, but I found my way through. But today there is an advocate, and I'm so honored to have her as a guest on this podcast. Her name is Sara Davidson, the divorce coach. She's coming to us from the UK. She's an award-winning author on breakup. I want to get this right. Divorce and domestic abuse, best-selling author, helping people find their power and get back. So welcome, Sara, to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Holly, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, yeah. So if you could just give us some insights on how you got to be known as the divorce coach and what you're up to these days, that would be lovely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a catchy job title, but it's not one that I dreamed of at school or anything like that.
Right.
I think with this kind of work, you get into it because you go through an experience, and that is exactly what happened for me. After 3 years of marriage, I found out that my husband not only no longer wanted to be married to me, he was also madly in love with somebody else.
Wow.
She was 12 years younger than me, which doesn't help, Holly. Stunningly beautiful, which also doesn't help. And I found out very soon afterwards that she was actually pregnant as well. So my life overnight changed because I worked with my husband. We had a business together. Obviously, we lived together, and our son was only 1 at the time. So I didn't see it coming. It hit me like a freight train. And I was already a coach then. I've been coaching for about 15 years. So it completely blindsided me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Looking back, there's definitely warning signs. But at that point, I just had my head in the clouds, I think, didn't really want to see anything that was wrong with it. And coming out of that relationship, I went through a lot of heartache, a lot of the ugly crying on the bathroom floor, a lot of calling my mom at 2 a.m. And then I realized after a couple of months, I can't carry on like this. This pain is too much. I've got a choice. I either let this break me or I step up and I turn it around. And everyone comes to that pivotal point at some point along that journey of you have a choice to make a difference and to turn things around or to carry on with that pain. And for me, that's when my motto was born, which was screw you, watch this. And I decided to take my power back as much as I could at that time and start to find a way forward. So I created tools and techniques to get me through and to help my son. And then I wrote my first book. That was Uncoupling. It became a bestseller. The second book, The Split, also became a bestseller. I have my podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness. But on my own, I couldn't help enough people. So that's when I set up my training school to train people who also, most of them have been through that pain to power journey. Some of them are ex sort of lawyers in that field or different types of therapists. But most people are on that journey, again, to turn that trauma into a triumph and turn it into something to help people. So now we've trained, I think it's over 650 coaches in 27 different countries around the world. So those people are out there helping people cope better with any kind of breakup using my tools and techniques and a lot of the practical tips that I'm known for to get those fast, positive transformations. So yeah, that's what we do.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story, right? But unfortunately, it's a story, at least the beginning part, that a lot of people go through, right?
Mm.
And so thank you for sharing that. And, I would say when we go up, when we're on our wedding day, when we're going up that aisle, up to the altar, it's never our intention or a person's intention, I'm going to hate this person. I'm going to end in divorce. But, in America, a divorce is at 50%. So, half the percent or 50% chance it's going to end in divorce. And I think it's a little bit less in the UK. But so speaking to those people that maybe feeling that are kind of in the before of the divorce, maybe like people change, right? There's a lot of reasons people get divorced, many, many reasons. But if speaking to those people that are stuck, that maybe know that they need to get out of it, but are fearful or don't know how to address it or anxious about it, what kind of advice can you give to people that are still in the marriage and just can't find a way out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we have to look at that in a well, there's two sides to that. If you're in a healthy relationship, and by that I mean that you can communicate, you're not worried about whether you're safe, there's no abuse, then that path is really looking. If you're in that situation, you've got to look at what do you want from your future, and that actually staying together in a relationship that doesn't make you happy isn't fulfilling. It's not healthy for you to be in that environment, but you can have that conversation if you're in a healthy partnership. So you can
Right.
sit down, you can do, what I would always say is, divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one. So therefore, it's not something we want to rush into without trying absolutely everything we can to make it better, to try and see if it's a miscommunication, if it's something that's been festering for a while, but if you just resolve a couple of those core issues, it could get better. That's something that, or are your expectations, that you're going to feel crazy and love every minute of every day? That's probably unrealistic. So looking at, is the grass greener and what are the challenges, and working around them with your partner. And that's where couples therapy can be really effective.
Of
If
course.
you're in an unhealthy relationship, if the dynamic is toxic, abusive, then we have to be very careful, because if you start to talk about leaving, then the whole crux of the relationship is built on control. And so once you start that the abuser feels you're pulling away, they will up the control and things can get incredibly dangerous. In fact, 30% of domestic homicides in the UK, but it is actually quite a global statistic. I found it in
Mm-hmm.
my research. About 30% of domestic homicides happen within 3 months of separation from a toxic relationship. But the chilling
Wow.
factor there, Holly, which is chilling, is that in over 80% of those cases, there was never any physical violence before. So that's because as you pull away from the controller, they need to up the ante. They need to do more to keep you there. So that's where sometimes it can tip over. Now, that's not to scare people, but it's definitely to say if you are in a toxic relationship, then get some specialist help and advice before you make decisions or you confront your abuser that you're leaving. Just because you'll know that the consequences will be, difficult, if not very dangerous. So again, we've got to look after those people in that scenario. But you can call your domestic abuse charity, your local one, and or to try and find some expert in your area who can help you work a plan to stay safe. I've also trained coaches that specialize in domestic abuse in the States, all over the world. So again, they're also able to help. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. In my situation, and sometimes it's hard to see, right? You don't know. It's hard to see. You just know that you're unhappy and that you're struggling. And like I said in the introduction, I bolted once the lights came on, and I did it without any compassion or grace. And not that I don't really believe it would have helped the adversity and the aggression that came after that, but for a lot of women, I mean, I'm speaking from that perspective, of course, a lot of times you can't see it. You don't see
Yeah.
the abuse. You don't see the manipulation and control until you can, right? And once I did, I was like, I'm out of here, which again, it blew it up. Like you said, it just went totally from, well, we were literally working out and he said, I really like, making love to you and giving you pleasure. And why don't you like it? And I said, I don't love you anymore. I mean, it was that brutal. But I had been thinking about it a long time, and I had been working through it. But so there are people out there that can't see how do you start to see that, that abuse, or how do you even know you're in an abusive relationship?
Well, it's really insightful question, because a lot of people don't know they're in an abusive relationship. I didn't. I'm a survivor of abuse, but I didn't know
Right.
that I was in a toxic relationship because I'd never met anybody like that before. For me, that was my scenario. Sometimes we are too familiar with abuse. Maybe you grew up in an abusive environment at home, or you had people that were influences in your life that were unkind to you or abusive as you grow up. So it feels ironically safe because it's familiar, but actually it is toxic. Also,
Mm-hmm.
to stay in those relationships, it doesn't happen overnight. When you first meet them, they are not the person they show up as on the last day, because if
Right.
they did, you wouldn't get into that relationship. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is it's a slow, insidious sort of wearing away of your confidence, your self-esteem, isolating you, reducing your confidence, your ability to feel that you can survive on your own outside of that environment. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it is carefully sort of curated performance, if you like, over that time to get you to the point where it's very difficult for anybody to leave, which is why on a lot of abuse victims, it takes them up to 8 attempts to actually leave for good. Many times they go back. So again, this is something that is normal. Also, to stay in it, we have to normalize it and minimalize the abuse, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise we have to make some big decisions. And normally, financially, it's very hard to leave. Maybe you've got kids and family that would make it difficult. Your confidence is so low, or you've been told you couldn't survive, or nobody would ever love you again because you're such a failure, or
Right.
unattractive, or whatever the abuse is on that particular day. So again, a lot of the times it's very hard to leave. And so we just ignore that, or we stuff it down. We just don't acknowledge it. And then coming out, I said about red flags and hindsight when I came out of my relationship. Oh my goodness, it's like, wow, how did I not see it? I mean, it was so much worse than I'd sort of realized in a
Yes.
way, because I tolerated it because I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
I should stay. And also for me, marriage was for life. But then
Yes.
suddenly, things change. So yeah, you're right. At the beginning, it's very hard.
And I agree with you. One of the things I talk about a lot is when you're familiar with stuff, your mind protects you by keeping you in your comfort zone, what you're familiar with. So just knowing that you are going to hit that kind of that anxiety, that wall, and that in order to really support yourself, that you have to find your way past it. And like you said, there's a lot of programs to help you, advocates to help you locally around. So let's talk about once you do. My divorce lasted a year and a half, and the kids were right in the middle. One of my only big regrets. I mean, I learned so much. We all do, right? Not that we want to have these life lessons, but one of my biggest regrets is the children being put in the middle, and just all the court cases and dragging, the financial. What advice do you have for people I mean, they're just raw. When you're getting out of divorce, you're raw, and you're questioning, and you're right in there with your lawyer, and I don't even know if there's anything that can smooth that out, but what do you have for those people?
I think it's about a lot of people will run away from clarity because clarity can be scary. So there'll be things that we're worried about, like money or the legal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we stick our head in the sand. We don't want to think, we don't want to really look at what our budget will be when we split the two lifestyles, because maybe it's going to be a lot less, and that's scary, or we don't really want to look at that. So we just stick our head in the sand. As human beings, we don't like change. So that's quite scary.
Right.
And like you said, we like to stay in our comfort zone. Ironically, even if that comfort zone, as we call it, is very uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable
Exactly.
that we know. So we know how bad it is. And so we know we can control it to some extent because we've been trying to do that. But outside, how do we know if that's going to be even worse? So we stay uncomfortable in a way, which is very normal. So this, if you are doing this, it's really normal behavior. So I would say, face up to the things that are keeping you awake at night. So if there are, for example, money worries, then actually sit with a friend. It doesn't have to be someone very expensive advisor or whatever. Just sit with a friend who's good with money. Go through your budget. Look at what you spend every month and be honest. Don't hide stuff. Like, you're only lying to yourself at this stage. We just want to get everything out there and say, right, this is what I spend every month. And then, okay, what can I survive on? What is, what do I need? And what extra is the want bit, the bit that makes me a bit comfortable, the bit where I can do a few extra things. And then looking, right, there's a gap. It might be $500. It might be $1,000. It could be whatever. But then you know. And when you know what the gap is, you can do something about it. You can either cut back or you can find other ways to create money to fill that space. So again, it gives you power. Clarity gives you power. But a lot of us will run away from that. And that's the same with the legal advice. Again, if you're going through a healthy divorce with a healthy partner, there's going to be conflict still. Everyone argues when you're trying to split, who sees the kids when, who gets the piano, all those things are going to cause tension. Even if you're nice people and you just, it will happen. But if it's a toxic relationship, there is no compromise, which is what a healthy relationship is all about at the end of the day. So this is the divorce process becomes all about total annihilation and causing maximum pain and suffering. So if you are going through that kind of breakup, it's important to get the emotional support, somebody that really understands what you're going through. Also, family and friends support, if you can get that around you as well, that will help. Good legal support, good financial support. And again, get outside that and look after yourself. So someone to go and exercise with or do some self-care with you. So having what I call your breakup support team will make that journey a lot better. Somebody that's been through it, that understands it, that can advise you, again, softens the blow, helps you manage those things, helps you avoid pitfalls as well, and can fast track your recovery through that as well, working in conjunction with the rest of your team.
I love that word clarity. Clarity is one of my words, and you're exactly right. If you start to look at your finances, then you become more familiar with them and then become less scary. And I wonder what percentage of marriages are in healthy relationships. I wonder I have no idea, because the only one I experienced was the unhealthy one. And so just to know that, yes, this is going to happen. It's going to be your partner is going to try to totally annihilate you. And if you have kids, they're potentially going to use the kids to do that as weapons. And I've seen it as a child, I was used as a weapon. And so that's how I knew going into my divorce that my children were being used as a weapon. So just knowing that, and just like you said, getting that support and just being there for yourself as much as you can, right?
Yeah. I think post-separation abuse is one of the biggest misunderstood challenges that we have, because people will say you're not with them anymore, you're not physically living with them anymore, therefore it's going to be better. It's up from here. But what they don't understand with abusers is that as they lose control, they have to then find other ways to get control. So all the things they did on a daily basis are now funneled through two things: the finances and the children. So the divorce process is extremely emotionally devastating when you're dealing with these kind of issues on a daily basis. But it's not all doom and gloom. You can learn from this. I've created techniques and tools to help you understand what's going on in their mind so you don't get caught up in the emotions. A lot of people will rent their abuser space 24/7 in their mind. So they're not living with them anymore, but they have basically let them move in rent-free into their brain. So they kind of are all the time. So the tools and techniques that we've created and my coaches use are to help you separate and emotionally disassociate. So you're not being gaslit. You're not chasing after every little grenade they're throwing off and distracting you and running up legal costs or other costs for you. Or, when they let you down with the kids, they're not showing up on time, or they're not telling you what they're doing next month, so you can't plan what you're doing. So again, this is really common, but there are lots of things you can do to start to take your control back in a safe way to help you then go, okay, well, I can't control what they're doing, but I can control how I'm reacting to this. I can control my own setup, so I'm not relying on them for anything at all, if possible. And then that might be, a bit tricky at times, but it's about focusing your attention where you can make that positive difference to yourself and move forward.
Nice. Clarity and preparedness, as much as you can prepare and at least know that this is common. This is how it happens. So the after, right? So it's a huge, huge difference, of course, whether you have children or not. And like I said, when I was a child, I started to say my mother used us as weapons, and we were alienated from my father, which did a lot of damage to my own self-worth and self-esteem. And so when I saw that happening with my kids, I was in an 8-year battle for them. And I honestly don't know if I did it because of my own anxieties or because I really loved them, but I knew I couldn't let them, I couldn't let my ex-husband alienate me like that. And today I'm so grateful for having a wonderful relationship with my boys.
Wow.
But there are people that spend years going, in that kind of tension with children. And I remember sometimes when my kids would leave, after school, I'd fall asleep at 6 o'clock on a Friday and never leave the apartment, trying to get that energy back. So if you find yourself in that situation, if there's listeners out there in that situation, what kind of things can they do to really work on themselves, to be there for their kids, and to move their lives forward at the same time?
I think self-care is something that a lot of people feel is selfish, and
Yeah.
it's not. Self-care is never selfish, because
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like when you're on the airplane, they say put your mask on first, the oxygen mask on first, and
Right.
then help your kids. Like, a lot of us go, what? I want to help my kid first. But obviously, if you're not around to be able to help them, that's no help to anyone. So I think looking after yourself is really important, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that everything happens for a reason and serves a
Yes.
purpose.
Yeah.
And there is some learning to come from this. I think, obviously putting your kids first is really important, and doing the right thing can be very
Mm-hmm.
difficult, because doing the right thing by your kids is not always the easy thing. Like,
Right.
bad mouthing your ex may feel like, justified, and you may well be justified. In most of the cases I hear, they are very justified, but that isn't the best thing for the kids, even though it might be
Right.
the easiest thing. So it's really taking accountability of, okay, I'm going to step up here as a parent. I'm going to do the right thing by my kids. Doesn't mean you can't vent to a friend or a family when the kids aren't with you. I mean, they hear through walls, kids. So I mean, we've got to be careful here. But but I do think that actually, if you put your kids' best interest first, and then navigating that parenting relationship. If you're with an ex who is healthy, then you can have a co-parenting relationship. That's fabulous. If you're with an ex that's abusive, there is no co-parenting. It's impossible. You can't do that, unfortunately. But there are things you can do. So you can work on things, for example, like you focus your time on your kids when they're with you, and you don't sweat the small stuff. You're never going to get them to agree things like bedtimes maybe, or amount of screen time, because once they know what you want, they're going to do the absolute opposite and then delight in it. So again, we
Right.
don't want to give our power away by telling them what we want. So we've got to, again, focus on what you can do, what you can control, and what you do in your own home. And again, that can be, setting values and moral codes, like there's no shouting, there's no bullying, there's no lying in our house. Not to say that when you go to the other house, that's what happens, but just by
Right.
contrast, the kids will learn, actually, I feel safer. It's more stable here, and it's not
Right.
okay. It's not good behavior. So you're not
Right.
calling them out or name calling the other parent, but you're showing by contrast, by your actions, your beliefs, the conversations you're having with your kids, that these values are important. So they understand right from wrong. It's very important. And then age appropriate, as they get older, there's different tools you can bring in to help them understand the dysfunction maybe that the other parent may be
Right.
dealing with. But actually, it's important that you just give them a safe environment where you're always there. And the good news is that children only need one healthy parent to come out just great. Okay. So you don't
Yeah.
need to beat yourself up about this. They don't need to be damaged. If you understand what you're doing, and you are a consistent, unconditional source of love for your child, and you're not bad mouthing the other parent, you're not using them as a pawn, you're doing the right thing by them, even when it's difficult for you, then your kids will be just fine. And actually, they can come out with this as a very valuable life experience. That means
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to make the same mistakes that maybe you and I did
Right.
making partner choices, because they understand what's okay and what's not okay, and they can see through that facade, or the charm, or the short-term high for the what comes next as a consequence with abuse. Just they'll be able to hone their radar, I call it, to spot the signs of abuse. So again, there is a silver lining to this, and I know it's tough. I've lived it, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things that actually you have the choice. Is this going to break you, or is this going to make you stronger, more confident? If you can get through that, you can get through anything. And my motto, screw you, watch this, is very empowering when they're trying their best to break you. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah. I love that. And certainly I tell people today that, I do regret my kids being in the middle, but every time, they would leave, I'd be strong in front of them, in front of the cops, in front of, when the apartment's destroyed, when I had to be. But when they would leave, I would fall to pieces on the
Mm.
floor. And every time I picked myself up, I saw things a little bit differently. And so for myself, I don't regret the lessons I learned there. And I love what you talk about, don't worry about the small stuff. I had a counselor once that told me, let their girlfriends and wives worry someday if their room is messy, right? You don't have to worry about that right now. And I love that you say that you only need one healthy parent. And I don't know if I was as healthy as I would have liked to have been back then. I think that I wish I could have been more healthy, because you're absolutely right. If you have somebody there explaining the pain, explaining how to process it, it doesn't become trauma. So that's really actually wonderful news. And there's many other topics we could go on about this. And I know there's dating again, there's, rebuilding your trust in yourself, but I don't want to take too much of your time. So is there anything kind of final advice or anything you want to leave them with? Any programs? You've talked a little bit about your coaching program, your books, anything else you'd like to talk to our listeners about, to give advice on before we finish up?
Well, first of all, you're never alone with this. And I think, a lot of people, it's very isolating. It does feel like you're really alone. And I certainly felt like that. And so one of the things that I did was I went out and I set up online support groups for people that they can just jump on. In fact, you get 8 hours of online free coaching with us when you come on board. And after that, it's about less than $1 an hour to get coached by my accredited coaches.
Amazing.
We run 8 hours a week. So that's on my website, saradavison.com, if you want to visit that. And you can just sign up, join on a session tonight. We run them every day of the week, I think. It's really powerful. You'll find your tribe of other people from all over the world dealing with similar issues. You can share some of your story, hear other stories, but importantly, get your questions answered by an accredited coach who can really help you. Obviously, we do one-to-one coaching. We have online retreats as well that we run, how to deal with toxic relationship recovery. So lots of support, but please know that it's not what happens to you in life that defines you. It's what you do about it that makes you the person you are. So ask for help, reach out. You can have that pivotal moment like I did, which was screw you, watch this. When you start asking for help, you start to take the power back. And if you follow me on Instagram, Sara Davidson, divorce coach, I put daily tips up to help you and advise you and steer you as well. So hopefully something there will resonate and help you move forward.
Wow, Sara, thank you so much for all you do. And like I said, if you had been around, it's been a while for me, but I'm so grateful for you to be around for everyone and for you to coach other people and to see it's not just about you, right? That's just,
I love it.
I'm going to tear up here, but I really appreciate you coming on today. And please stay on after recording. And yeah, everyone, I hope this was helpful for you if you're out there in either the before situation, the middle of it, or living with or without children in the aftermath. Reach out to Sara. Know that there's help out there. And thank you so much, Sara, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Pay Attention. We'll see you next time. Cheers.